From the moment the wedding date was fixed, my heart overflowed with joy. A mother's biggest dream is to see her son start a new chapter, to watch him build his own family, to bless him as he steps into married life. I spent sleepless nights planning little details, picturing the smile on his face when he'd see everything arranged with love. But what I hadn't expected was how quickly my joy would be stolen from me. At first, it was small things. The bride's family would walk into our home, speaking loudly about their grand ideas. I stood there smiling politely, waiting to be asked for my opinion. But no one ever did. "Let's keep the main stage in gold and cream. It will look elegant," I suggested softly once. The bride's mother looked at me and said with a forced smile, "Oh, that's nice, but we've already decided on deep red and silver. It's what our side prefers." My words fell flat, and my son stood there nodding at them as if my voice was nothing more than background noise. I told myself, it's fine, maybe they're just excited. After all, weddings bring out strong opinions. But soon it wasn't just about colors or decorations, it was about everything. Guest lists, seating arrangements, even the rituals. When I tried to speak, I was brushed aside. "Don't worry, Auntie, we'll handle this," the bride's cousin said one evening, calling me Auntie in my own house. My hands trembled as I held the tea tray, realizing I was slowly being pushed into the shadows. And my son. He barely noticed. Or maybe he chose not to notice. One night, as I sat in the living room, looking through old photographs of his childhood, he walked in. His phone buzzed in his hand. I smiled, trying to hold back my hurt. "Beta, do you remember how I always dreamed of dancing at your wedding? Just one simple performance, me and you, like we used to dance when you were small." He looked at me distracted, then said, "Ma, it's not really necessary. The bride's family has already arranged the dance sequence. It might look odd if you just suddenly join." My heart sank. Suddenly join? This was my son's wedding. My dream, my life's joy. And yet I was being treated like an outsider. Still, I swallowed my tears and forced a smile. Maybe tomorrow will be better, I told myself. Maybe he will realize my worth before it's too late. But deep inside, I already felt it. The distance growing between us, a wall I could no longer break. And little did I know. This was only the beginning of my humiliation. As the wedding days drew closer, I noticed my son changing. The boy who once ran to me for advice on everything, his studies, his career, even what shirt to wear, now hardly looked me in the eyes. It wasn't just busyness. No, it was distance, a coldness I couldn't explain. One afternoon, I entered his room quietly. He was on a video call with his fiancée. I heard her voice, sharp but sweetened with sugar. "Don't let your mother interfere too much, okay? My parents are handling things perfectly. We don't want her old-fashioned ideas ruining the look." My heart clenched. I stepped back, but before I could leave, my son noticed me. He ended the call quickly, his face stiff. "Ma, you should have knocked," he said curtly. I froze. This was the same boy who used to hug me the moment I walked in, who never cared for formality in his mother's presence. I forced a smile. "Beta, I just came to ask if you'd like some tea." "No, I'll have later," he muttered, already scrolling his phone. His disinterest cut me deeper than words ever could. That evening, the bride's family came over. I sat in the corner, listening as they discussed guest seating. "The bride's relatives should be at the front," her father declared. "Yes, and the groom's mother can sit with the extended family at the side rows," added her aunt casually, as if deciding my place was theirs to command. I opened my mouth. "Excuse me. I am the groom's mother. Shouldn't I—" But before I could finish, my son interrupted. "It's fine, Ma. Don't make it a big deal. They're just trying to organize things properly." His words silenced me. My voice, once his guiding light, now seemed like an unwanted interruption. That night, I cried quietly in my room. Memories of his childhood haunted me. The nights I stayed awake when he had fevers, the sacrifices I made so he could have a good education, the meals I skipped so he never went hungry. Was all of that invisible now? The next morning, I decided to brush it off, telling myself maybe the stress of wedding planning was making him short-tempered. I prepared his favorite breakfast, hoping to lighten his mood. When I placed the tray in front of him, he barely looked up. "I already ate at her house," he said flatly. "Her house. Not our home. Not with me." I forced myself to stay composed. But inside, my heart shattered into pieces. Later that day, while I was arranging some gifts, the bride's cousin walked past me laughing. "Auntie, you're working too hard. Don't worry. Our side will make sure everything looks perfect. You can just relax. Relax." That word felt like an insult. I wasn't asked to be part of the preparations. I was told to step aside. When I looked at my son for support, he just smiled faintly and said nothing. Silence can be louder than words, and his silence screamed betrayal. As the days passed, the cold shoulder became colder. He stopped eating meals with me, stopped asking about my opinion, stopped noticing my presence, and slowly I realized my son, my only son, was slipping away from me. But I still held on to a fragile hope that on the wedding day itself, he would remember who I was. He would remember that before anyone else, I was his mother. What I didn't know was that the wedding day would not only strip away that hope, it would strip me of my dignity in front of everyone. The days before the wedding felt like a storm. My house, once warm and filled with my son's laughter, was now buzzing with strangers, faces from the bride's side, relatives I had never met, walking around as if they owned the place. They gave orders to decorators, instructed the caterers, even told my neighbors where to park their cars. I stood there like a guest in my own home. One afternoon, I tried to offer a suggestion about the food. "Our relatives don't eat too spicy. Maybe we should balance the menu a little." The bride's mother cut me off sharply. "Don't worry, Auntie. Our guests prefer spice, and after all, more of our people are attending. Our people. As if I had none. I turned toward my son, silently begging for support. But he just lowered his eyes and said, "She's right, Ma. Let's keep it simple." Simple. That was his word for dismissing me. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped back. The decorators moved around me like I was invisible. That evening, while I lit a small lamp in the corner of the living room, 2 women from the bride's family whispered loudly enough for me to hear. "Why is she even here? Everything's being handled by us. She should just stay out of the way." Their laughter rang in my ears long after they left. The final blow came when rituals were discussed. I had always dreamed of performing the traditional blessings for my son and daughter-in-law. It was a mother's right, a sacred role. But as the bride's father spoke with authority, he declared, "We will follow our traditions. Our family priest will conduct everything. The groom's side can just observe." Observe? Was I nothing more than a spectator at my own son's wedding? I protested softly, "But in our custom, the mother blesses the couple before the vows. It's important." The bride's aunt smiled mockingly. "Oh, Auntie, times have changed. These old traditions don't matter anymore. Let the younger generation handle things." The room fell silent. All eyes shifted to my son, waiting to see if he would defend me. I held my breath. He hesitated for a moment, then said quietly, "It's fine, Ma. Don't worry about it. Just sit and enjoy. Enjoy." My role was being taken from me piece by piece, and he wanted me to enjoy it. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly I had lost my place in his life. Was it when he got engaged? Or had it started long before, when I believed blindly that my love was enough to keep him close forever? The morning of the wedding rehearsal, my humiliation reached its peak. As I entered the hall, one of the bride's cousins pointed at me and whispered to another, "That's her." The mother who keeps interfering. No wonder the bride's family has taken over. Their eyes lingered on me with pity, as though I were an unwelcome guest. I tried to straighten my back, hold my head high, but inside I was breaking. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror by the entrance. My eyes were swollen from crying, my sari slightly creased. For the first time in my life, I felt small in front of strangers. I had dreamt of being honored at my son's wedding, of being introduced proudly to his new family. Instead, I was being erased, but a storm was brewing inside me. And though I tried to keep silent, fate was already preparing the moment that would shatter what little dignity I had left. The wedding day was coming, and with it, my deepest humiliation. The wedding day arrived. From the outside, it was everything a family could dream of. Bright lights, colorful drapes, laughter echoing in every corner. Guests in dazzling clothes filled the hall. Music played, cameras flashed. But for me, it felt like walking into someone else's celebration. I wore the sari I had saved for this day, a silk my husband once gifted me before he passed. I told myself at least today my son will remember me. Today, he will look for his mother's blessings. But as I entered the hall, I felt the stares. Not of admiration, but of dismissal. I walked quietly, clutching the edge of my sari, searching for a place to sit. I spotted a chair near the front row and moved toward it. Before I could sit, the bride's uncle stopped me. His voice was polite but firm. "Sorry, this row is for the bride's family. Could you please sit further back?" I froze. "But I am the groom's mother." "Shouldn't I?" He smiled tightly. Yes, but the bride's family is larger. We need to prioritize their comfort." "I'm sure you'll understand." His words stabbed at my chest. I looked at my son across the hall, laughing with the bride's cousins, oblivious to the scene unfolding. I waited for him to notice, to call out, to say, "That's my mother. Give her respect." But he didn't. I stepped aside silently. My hands trembled as I adjusted my palu, trying to hide the heat rising in my face. I found a seat at the back, far from the stage, far from my son. As the rituals began, I craned my neck to see. The priest chanted loudly. The bride's parents stood proudly beside their daughter, performing every blessing, every role that should have been mine. When the moment came for the couple to receive blessings, I stood up, ready to step forward. But before I could, the bride's aunt blocked me gently with her hand. "Please, Auntie, let the elders of our family do this. The photographers need symmetry, and too many people on stage will spoil the pictures." Spoil the pictures. That's what I had been reduced to, a background flaw in my own son's wedding. My voice cracked as I whispered, "But I am his mother. I have a right—" She cut me off, her tone sharp now. "Don't create a scene. Everyone is watching. Everyone was watching." Guests had turned their heads. I saw pity in some eyes, amusement in others. And in that crowd, I searched desperately for my son's gaze. Finally, our eyes met. For one heartbeat, I thought he would come forward, take my hand, and place me beside him. But he only looked away, pretending not to notice. The betrayal was complete. I stepped back, my knees weak, my heart pounding. The hall blurred as tears welled in my eyes. The chants, the music, the laughter, all of it drowned under the sound of my own breaking heart. When the vows were exchanged, I sat at the very edge of the hall, half hidden behind a pillar. No one came to ask if I had eaten, if I was comfortable, if I was even okay. And then, the final humiliation came. A staff member, carrying extra chairs, approached me. "Ma'am, would you mind moving outside? These seats are needed for more guests. You can sit in the waiting area, outside." I was being told to leave the hall. I looked around, praying someone, anyone, would intervene. But the guests avoided my gaze. And my son? My son was too busy posing for photographs with his new bride. My lips trembled as I whispered, almost to myself, "I gave him my life. And now, I don't even have a seat at his wedding." I walked outside slowly, each step heavier than the last. I sat on a cold metal chair near the entrance, listening to the muffled sound of celebration from inside. People passed by, some recognizing me, whispering among themselves. "That's the groom's mother. Why is she sitting here?" I bowed my head, hiding my tears. My hands clutched the corner of my sari as if it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. I wanted to run, to leave everything behind. But some invisible force kept me rooted, forced to hear the sound of joy I was excluded from. And in that moment, under the sparkling lights and laughter that should have been mine to share, I realized the truth. I had lost my son, not to marriage, but to indifference, and the world had watched me lose with cruel silence. I sat outside the hall, my ears catching every muffled sound of the wedding I had dreamed of for years. The chants of the priest, the applause, the cheers, it all felt like knives twisting into my chest. My eyes burned from holding back tears. I told myself, stay strong. Don't let them see you break. But how could I stay strong when my son had chosen to let me be pushed out like an unwanted guest? Minutes passed like hours. Guests began coming out for refreshments, their eyes flicking toward me, their whispers sharp enough to pierce the night. Isn't that the groom's mother? Why is she sitting out here? They didn't give her respect at all. Disgraceful. Maybe she's too controlling, maybe that's why they sidelined her. The rumors swirled, each one like poison. I wanted to scream, to tell them the truth, that I had given my life to raise my son, that I had sacrificed everything for this very day. But my lips wouldn't move. My dignity was hanging by a fragile thread, and silence was the only shield I had left. Inside, I heard the music shift. The couple had exchanged garlands. Guests clapped and cheered. My heart ached with a raw pain that words could never hold. I wasn't there to bless him. I wasn't there to see his eyes light up. I wasn't there because I wasn't wanted. When the ceremony ended, people spilled outside, laughing, hugging, clicking pictures. A few of my relatives glanced at me with pity but said nothing. No one dared to challenge the bride's family. Then I saw him, my son. He stepped out with his new wife, her parents flanking him proudly, their hands resting on his shoulders like he belonged more to them than to me. For a fleeting moment, I hoped he would notice me sitting there, walk over and say, "Come, Ma, be with me. You are the reason I am here today." But he didn't. He passed me with a distracted smile, too busy greeting his in-laws' guests. Not even a glance. Not even a word. The final thread inside me snapped. I stood up quietly, adjusting my sari, hiding my trembling hands. Without saying a word, without looking back, I began to walk away. Each step felt heavier than the last, but there was no point staying where I wasn't respected, where I wasn't even seen. As I reached the gate, I heard a faint voice behind me, an old neighbor. "Sister, are you leaving already? The reception is about to start." I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Yes, I'm tired. Let them enjoy. They don't need me." She hesitated as if she wanted to say more, but she didn't stop me. No one did. The night air was cold against my tear-stained face. I wrapped my shawl tighter around me and walked down the empty street, each echo of my footsteps louder than the celebration I left behind. My mind was a storm. I thought of the nights I stayed awake with him as a baby, the mornings I walked miles just to earn enough to feed him, the prayers I whispered for his future. Was it all meaningless? A mother gives without expecting anything in return, but still. Every mother dreams of love, respect, and acknowledgement. That night, I realized I had lost not only my son's respect, but perhaps his love too. When I finally reached home, the silence was unbearable. The decorations I had put up with such hope now mocked me. I sat on the floor, clutching an old photograph of him as a boy, and whispered through my sobs, "Did you forget, Beta, who I was to you?" And as the last of my tears fell, I knew this was not the end. The price of betrayal always finds its way back. The wedding celebrations had barely ended when the golden promises of his new life began to tarnish. At first, everything seemed perfect. The bride's family showered him with attention. The house buzzed with laughter, and he felt like the center of their world. But soon, the cracks started to show. In the first week itself, he noticed how decisions were never really his. His wife's parents had a say in everything, from where the couple would live, to how money would be spent, to even the tiniest details of their meals. One evening, when he timidly suggested they spend their first night at his mother's house to seek her blessings, his wife scoffed. "Why would we go there?" she said, her voice sharp. "Your mother already made it clear she's not important to my family. We have everything we need here." Her words sliced through him, but he stayed quiet, convincing himself it was just the excitement of marriage talking. Deep down, guilt stirred. He remembered his mother's lonely figure outside the hall, but he forced the memory away. Days turned into weeks. He tried to please his in-laws, to blend into their world, but it became painfully clear he wasn't their son, just their son-in-law. At dinner, conversations revolved around their business, their relatives, their achievements. He was expected to listen, nod, agree. Whenever he tried to add something of his own, someone would interrupt. "Not now," his father-in-law would say dismissively, waving a hand. "Focus on our family's matters first," his mother-in-law would chime in. His wife, the girl he had once thought was his greatest support, laughed along with them. The smile he adored now felt like a mask. Slowly, he realized he had traded one family for another, only to become a stranger in both. One night, after yet another tense dinner, he sat alone on the balcony. The laughter inside sounded hollow. He pulled out his phone, scrolling absent-mindedly, and his eyes landed on his mother's missed call from 3 days ago. Guilt clenched his chest. He hadn't even returned it. He told himself he'd call tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. The next morning, a small incident opened his eyes further. His wife was on the phone with her mother, complaining about him. "He doesn't dress properly. He's not ambitious enough. Sometimes I wonder if I could have done better." His heart froze. He wasn't supposed to hear that. Yet there it was, the beginning of truth, the start of disappointment. That night, he lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. The image of his mother leaving the wedding hall in silence returned to him like a haunting. For the first time, regret dug its claws deep. He had pushed away the one person who truly loved him, only to stand on shaky ground in a house where his worth was questioned. The golden curtain of marriage was slipping, thread by thread. And through the cracks, he saw the shadows of betrayal, waiting to consume him. At first, he thought the unease in his marriage was temporary, a passing storm. But soon it became a daily reality. His wife's sharp words, her parents' constant interference, and his own invisible place in the household ate away at him. The guilt that had lingered since the wedding now grew heavier, pressing on his chest every time he remembered his mother's tear-filled eyes. The community hadn't forgotten either. In hushed tones, neighbors discussed what had happened. At the grocery store, at the mosque, in quiet corners of the street, people whispered about how a mother was forced to sit outside her own son's wedding. "Did you hear what they did to her?" One woman said to another, shaking her head. "I could never imagine such cruelty. Poor soul." "They think money and status makes them above love and respect," another replied. "But God sees everything." Every whisper was like a knife to him. He felt eyes on his back, pity in their gazes, judgment in their silences. Where once he had been praised as a dutiful son, now people looked at him as though he was heartless, a man who had betrayed the very hands that raised him. At home, things only worsened. His wife's family, once warm and welcoming, now began treating him like a burden. If he was late from work, they accused him of laziness. If he suggested something, they mocked his ideas. His father-in-law dismissed him in front of relatives, saying, "He doesn't know how we do things here. He'll learn, or he won't." The son's pride shattered. He had left his mother alone, ignored her sacrifices, and for what? To sit at a table where he was never truly wanted. One evening, a heated argument broke out between him and his wife. She accused him of being too attached to his past, of clinging to old traditions that didn't matter anymore. "Your mother is the reason we fought on our wedding night," she hissed. "I told you then, and I'll tell you now, my family comes first." The words burned him. Suddenly, his silence could no longer protect him. "And where has putting your family first brought us?" He shot back, his voice shaking with anger. "I turned my back on the only woman who truly loved me. For you, for them. And look what I've become. Just a puppet. A stranger in my own life." His wife glared, unrepentant. "Maybe you should have thought of that before you chose me." The fight ended in bitter silence, but its echoes stayed. For the first time, he saw his marriage for what it truly was, not a union of love, but a transaction controlled by power, pride, and arrogance. And karma did not wait long to arrive. Word of his mother's humiliation spread wider, reaching elders of the community. Invitations from neighbors grew fewer. The bride's family, once proud of their status, now faced cold shoulders and quiet criticism. Their arrogance was no longer admired but despised. During one gathering, an elder woman looked directly at the bride's mother and said, "Respect begins at home. If you cannot honor the woman who gave her son to your daughter, what honor will remain for you?" The bride's mother flushed, humiliated, while others exchanged knowing glances. The son, standing nearby, felt the sting of truth pierce deeper. It was no longer just his burden, it was theirs too. The same family who once made his mother sit outside now found themselves pushed to the edges of respectability. At night, regret kept him awake. He replayed the wedding in his mind, wishing he had stood up, wishing he had defended her dignity. The image of his mother's trembling hands and silent exit haunted him like a curse. Poetic justice had begun its slow dance, and he was trapped in its rhythm. The pain of his choices, the shame of his silence, and the unraveling of his new life pulled him toward an inevitable truth. He had betrayed love for illusion, and the price was only just beginning to be paid. The son could no longer bear the weight of silence. Days had turned into weeks, each one heavier than the last, until his guilt left him sleepless and restless. At last, he decided to face the very person he had wronged most, the woman who had given him everything, only to be cast aside when she needed him most. He drove back to his childhood home, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. The familiar walls came into view, but instead of comfort, they filled him with shame. How many times had she stood at that very door waiting for him? How many nights had she prayed for his happiness, only to be repaid with humiliation? When she opened the door, her face carried both surprise and a quiet strength. The years of sacrifice had already etched lines into her skin, but the fresh wound of betrayal had aged her more in weeks than in years. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he fell to his knees, his voice breaking. "Ma, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I was blinded, I was weak. I let them silence you, humiliate you, and I stood by. I don't know how to live with myself." Her eyes filled, but her tone was steady. "Get up, my son. A mother never finds joy in seeing her child on the ground." He lifted his head, tears streaming down his face. "Please tell me you can forgive me. I cannot breathe under this guilt. I chose them over you, and I lost everything." She knelt beside him, her hands gently touching his face, the way she had done when he was a child. "I have already forgiven you in my heart," she said softly. "But forgiveness does not erase what has been done. The scar remains." Her words pierced him more deeply than anger ever could. He realized that forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It meant she would not let hatred poison her soul. But her dignity, her self-respect, would never again be surrendered. They sat together in silence, the air heavy with both grief and healing. Finally, she spoke again. "You wanted a grand wedding, a life filled with their approval. And yet, look where it led you. Respect cannot be bought, love cannot be forced, and family cannot be replaced. Remember this: the world may honor wealth, but God honors truth. Never again forget the hand that fed you, the heart that prayed for you, the womb that carried you." Her words were both a blessing and a boundary. She would not turn him away, but neither would she return to the shadows of his life. She had found her strength again, not in others' acceptance, but in her own resilience. The son bowed his head, broken but grateful. "I will spend the rest of my life proving I have learned, Ma, even if it takes forever." She smiled faintly, though her eyes still glistened. "Do not spend your life proving to me. Prove it to yourself. Be the man I raised you to be." The story of humiliation and betrayal had ended not with revenge, but with dignity. The bride's family had lost their reputation. The marriage was on shaky ground. But the mother, once forced to sit outside, now sat firmly within her own strength. Her final act was not of bitterness, but of wisdom. She had reclaimed her voice, her worth, and her place, not in their world, but in her own. And that more than anything was justice,